Imagine a world where the devil walks among us, not hidden in shadows, but right out in the open, challenging our deeply held beliefs, exposing our deepest flaws, and orchestrating this grand, really bizarre spectacle. What if this incredible, often terrifying encounter revealed profound truths? About the very essence of humanity, the nature of power, and maybe the surprising, undeniable resilience of art itself. Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today we're taking a deep dive into an extraordinary, defiant, and utterly captivating piece of literature. A novel that, in its very existence, kind of proved one of its own core claims. Mikhail Bulgakov's legendary masterpiece, The Master and Margarita. Our mission today is to really unpack this complex and captivating work. We'll explore its two intricately interwoven narratives. You've got the satirical chaos of 1930s Moscow, teeming with peculiar characters and supernatural antics. And then there's the ancient tragedy of Pontius Pilate in Yerushalayim, a story of conscience and betrayal. As we journey through these worlds, we'll extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from our material. We'll delve into Bulgakov's own struggles, which profoundly shaped the novel, introduce you to the unforgettable characters who populate its pages, and uncover the novel's surprising reflections on truth, power, and maybe most importantly, the transformative power of mercy.
And our guide for this deep dive is drawn directly from specific excerpts of the Master and Margarita.pdf. This incredible source provides just a rich tapestry of Bulgakov's tumultuous life, the novel's turbulent genesis, and key passages from the narrative itself. It really allows us to grasp the layers of meaning embedded within this remarkable text. Hashtag Bulgakov's struggle and the novel's birth.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The backstory here is truly as compelling as the novel itself, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Bulgakov began writing this very early, around late 1928 or early 1929. And this wasn't just any time in Russia. It was a period of immense, almost unimaginable suffering for its people. What specific conditions in Soviet Russia back then deeply impacted Bulgakov and, by extension, the themes of this novel?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial to understand the context. This era was marked by the brutal reality of forced collectivization, where private farms were seized and consolidated by the state. It decimated Russia's peasantry, shattered its agricultural backbone. It was also the period of the vast expansion of the infamous system of corrective labor camps, the Gulag.
Right, the Gulag.
A network of forced labor camps where countless individuals were sent to suffer and often die. And then you had the secret police, a pervasive, terrifying presence infiltrating every single area of life. And the liquidation of the intelligentsia through sweeping party purges and those chilling Moscow show trials, these staged public trials designed to extract false confessions and eliminate political opponents, that was a grim daily reality.
Wow.
This whole environment of terror and suppression, it directly fueled the novel's most profound and enduring themes.
And Bulgakov himself was caught right in the crosshairs of this literary struggle. By 1930, he found himself so thoroughly excluded that he couldn't publish, couldn't produce his work. He took an extraordinary step, though, writing a letter directly to the central government. What exactly was the nature of that letter? What was he hoping to achieve in such a restrictive environment?
It was incredibly audacious, a desperate move, really. In that letter, he laid out his dire situation, asking for direct permission to emigrate. He stated unequivocally that the hostility of the literary powers made it utterly impossible for him to live or work there.
Just couldn't function.
Exactly. Failing that, he requested a job that aligned with his specialties, specifically as a titular director in a theater. And astonishingly, on April 17th, Stalin himself responded by telephone.
Stalin himself on the phone.
Yes, a truly rare and, frankly, bewildering event. This led to Bulgakov's hiring at the Moscow Art Theater as an assistant director and literary consultant. But the respite was fleeting. His own plays were still quickly withdrawn from production, other works summarily rejected by publishers.
So no real change.
Pretty much. The core insight here is that these suffocating circumstances are just. They're everywhere present in The Master and Margarita. The novel was, in no small part, Bulgakov's powerful challenge to the rule of terror in literature itself.
So this wasn't just a difficult book to write. It sounds like it was a battle. The source says it was abandoned, taken up again, burned, resurrected, recast, and revised many times. A true phoenix of a novel, rising from its own ashes, literally at one point. How did his personal struggles influence the very evolution of the story and its characters?
Well, the successive stages of his work on the novel, his constantly changing evaluations of the book's nature and its characters, they truly reflect the tumultuous events in his life. And crucially, his deepening grasp of what was at stake in the struggle he was engaged in, both personally and artistically. This evolving understanding just permeated the very fabric of the narrative. What's also fascinating is the specific moment when his new wife, Elena Sergeyevna, entered the composition. This was October 1932. She, quite naturally, expressed surprise that he could set to work without any notes or earlier drafts with him.
Right, how could he remember it all?
But Bulgakov, with this profound confidence, just stated, "I know it by heart."
Wow.
This level of internalization, it speaks volumes about his dedication and the story's grip on him. It symbolizes the novel's resilience, even when it only existed in his mind.
And the novel's working titles really hammer home who Bulgakov originally saw as the central figure, don't they? The earliest version, for instance, was called The Engineer's Hoof. What did those early titles tell us about his initial vision?
Yes, that earliest version, written in the first few months of 1929, it was quite different in its initial scope. It contained no trace of Margarita at all, and only a faint hint of the Master, and it was then a minor character. The pilot story, which later became so central and expansive, was confined to just a single chapter, the Gospel of Woland.
Just one chapter.
Just one. But even then, it included the essentials of the Moscow satire. It opened with that dialogue between a people's poet and an editor debating the portrayal of Christ as an exploiter. Subsequent titles, however, consistently referred to Satan as the central figure, no doubt about his primary role.
Like what?
Titles like The Great Chancellor, Satan, Here I Am, The Black Theologian, He Has Come, and The Hoofed Consultant.
The Hoofed Consultant, I like that one.
Right. This consistent focus on the infernal figure highlights his pivotal role from the novel's early conceptualization, even as other elements evolved around him. The core insight here is that from its very inception, this novel was conceived as a confrontation with ultimate evil, even if its ultimate form and message would profoundly shift. #, Moscow's unsuspecting literary elite.
And here's where the novel truly begins to weave its spell. The story opens on a sweltering May evening at the Patriarch's Ponds, described with this almost eerie emptiness. Not a single person to be seen at that hour when it seemed no longer possible to breathe. What atmosphere does this initial setting immediately establish for you, the reader?
This initial setting is just crucial for establishing the atmosphere of Soviet Moscow. It's outwardly calm, but there's this underlying sense of oppressive stillness, almost a vacuum waiting to be filled. Into this scene, we're immediately introduced to two key figures of the Moscow literary elite, Mikhail Alexandrovich Berlioz.
The editor.
Right, described as the editor of a fat literary journal, and, more importantly, the chairman of Messelit, this invented, satirical parodying contraction of Soviet literary associations. His young companion is the poet Ivan Nikolaevich Ponyrev, who writes under the rather poignant pseudonym Homeless.
Homeless, yeah.
The core insight is that this literary establishment, ostensibly tasked with shaping public thought, is just ripe for exposure.
And almost immediately there's this strange, unsettling feeling that grips Berlioz. He's suddenly gripped by fear, groundless yet so strong that he wanted to flee the ponds at once. What's the significance of this premonition, and what are they even doing when this strikes him?
This groundless fear serves as an immediate visceral hint that the rational, predictable world Berlioz believes he inhabits is about to be utterly shattered. It's the first crack in the facade of Soviet materialist rationalism. And the delicious irony, as you pointed out, is that he thinks to himself, maybe it's time to send it all to the devil.
Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. And what are they doing when this fear strikes? They're engaged in this fervent anti-religious debate, a cornerstone of Soviet ideology at the time. Ivan, the poet, is tasked with writing an anti-religious poem portraying Christ as an exploiter of the proletariat.
Yes, but Berlioz, ever the doctrinaire editor, quickly steps in to correct Ivan's approach. He argues that the main point isn't how Jesus was, whether he was good or bad, but rather
that this same Jesus, as a person, simply never existed in the world. He asserts that all stories about him are mere fiction, the most ordinary mythology.
So, complete denial of his existence. What does this foundational atheism tell us about the Soviet intellectual climate Bulgakov is satirizing here?
This rigid, dogmatic atheism, presented as irrefutable fact by the intellectual elite, it sets the perfect stage for the arrival of a character who will violently and humorously prove them catastrophically wrong. Berlioz even brings up common mythological motifs, noting there's not a single Eastern religion in which, as a rule, an immaculate virgin did not give birth to a god.
Trying to rationalize it away.
Right. He emphasizes that Christians created their Jesus, who in fact never lived. The core insight here is Bulgakov's direct critique of a regime that sought to erase spiritual belief and replace it with this dry, dogmatic materialism. This intellectual arrogance is precisely what the devil is about to dismantle. Hashtag the devil's arrival in First Prophecy.
And into this stagnant, sweltering scene where two self-proclaimed rationalists are debating the non-existence of Jesus, a truly bizarre figure suddenly emerges. Describe his appearance. What kind of presence does he embody?
He's an imposing and unsettling figure, described vividly as a transparent citizen of the strangest appearance. He's 7 feet tall, but narrow in the shoulders, unbelievably thin, and with a jeering physiognomy.
Jeering.
His physical details are immediately uncanny. Platinum crowns on the left side of his teeth, gold on the right. He's clad in an expensive gray suit and imported shoes, suggesting this worldly sophistication that contrasts with his unsettling appearance. A gray beret is cocked rakishly over one ear, and he carries a stick with a black knob shaped like a poodle's head.
Ah, the Faust connection.
Exactly. A subtle nod to Goethe's Faust, where Mephistopheles often appears as a black poodle. It immediately signals Woland's infernal identity. But most notably, it's his eyes. They truly arrest the reader. The left eye, the green one, was totally insane, while the right one was empty, black, and dead.
Chilling.
He's clearly a foreigner, constantly twisting his mouth, which only adds to his unsettling, uncanny presence. The core insight is that Woland is both elegant and grotesque, ordinary and utterly alien. He embodies this chaotic yet purposeful evil.
And Woland doesn't waste any time, does he? He immediately cuts to the chase, challenging their comfortable atheism. He asks Berlioz, "Unless I heard wrong, you were pleased to say that Jesus never existed." What is Woland's immediate response to Berlioz's affirmation? And what deeper message does it convey?
Woland's response is both simple and profoundly unsettling. He simply existed, that's all, followed by the definitive, there's no need for any proofs.
Just states it as fact.
Precisely. This direct refutation, delivered with such casual certainty, immediately sets the stage for a different kind of reality, one where their rationalist assumptions are meaningless. He then makes these seemingly absurd comments that only heighten the surreal atmosphere, claims to have had breakfast with Kant.
With Kant.
Or even suggesting he sent Kant to Solovki. Now, this reference is a chilling historical anchor within this fantastical conversation. It subtly connects the ancient narrative and the philosophical debate to the brutal, terrifying realities of the Soviet era, specifically referencing the notorious Solovetsky special purpose camps, a place of unspeakable suffering and forced labor.
Wow, that's dark.
The core insight here is that Woland's authority comes not from logic or proof, but from an undeniable, preternatural knowledge that shatters all conventional understanding.
The conversation then takes a truly dark and ominous turn. Berlioz, trying to regain control, states that man is mortal. No one disputes that. It's pretty self-evident. But Woland, with chilling precision, corrects him. He introduces this terrifying variable. The worst of it is that he's sometimes unexpectedly mortal. There's the trick. And generally, he's unable to say what he's going to do this same evening.
Yeah.
And then the prophecy. Your head will be cut off. What makes this prophecy so chillingly precise? How does it immediately establish Woland's power?
Woland's preternatural knowledge and control truly manifest here. When Berlioz, trying to joke it off, asks if it will be by enemies, interventionists, Woland delivers the final shocking detail: no, by a Russian woman, a Komsomol girl.
So specific.
Terrifyingly specific, but the most perplexing and mundane detail comes next. Anushka has already bought the sunflower oil and has not only bought it, but has already spilled it, so the meeting will not take place.
Anushka and the sunflower oil. It sounds so random.
Exactly. Berlioz is vexed by the apparent absurdity, while even, ever suspicious, thinks Woland is pretending to be a fool in order to find out something or other. This scene, happening so early, establishes Woland's undeniable power and foreshadows the impending chaos. It sets up an immediate, undeniable clash between rigid Soviet rationalism and this terrifying supernatural reality. The core insight is Bulgakov's assertion that even in a world obsessed with control and planning, human fate is ultimately subject to forces beyond its understanding and sometimes beyond its control. Hashtag Pilot's Anguish and the Philosopher.
So we've seen Woland unleash chaos and chilling prophecies in Moscow. But Bulgakov then makes this daring leap. Just as Berlioz's fate is sealed, the narrative transports us thousands of years into the past, reminding us that these questions of conscience and power are timeless. Can you set the scene for Pontius Pilate in Yerushalayim and describe his state of mind?
This jarring transition is a masterstroke. It immediately immerses us in a completely different world, yet one that will prove inextricably linked to Moscow. Pilate, the embodiment of Roman authority, is presented not as a stoic ruler, but as a man suffering intensely. It's the morning of the 14th day of the spring month of Nisan, and he appears in his iconic white cloak with blood-red lining with the shuffling gait of a cavalryman. He's afflicted by a severe hemicrania, a debilitating migraine.
A migraine, okay.
And, ironically, he's tormented by the pervasive smell of rose oil, which he hated more than anything in the world. Everything seems to exude this cursed rosy flux. He anticipates a bad day, wishing only to collapse on the bed, send for cold water, call in a plaintive voice for his dog Bunga, the sole source of comfort in his isolated life.
And his internal anguish is just palpable. He experiences a sickening anguish, where the simplest, most brutal path would be to drive this strange robber off the balcony by uttering just 2 words, hang him. Yet the thought of poison flashed temptingly in the procurator's sick head, suggesting this deep-seated despair, a desire for escape from his heavy responsibilities. He's clearly a man at his breaking point. How does this raw torment and Pilate contrast with, or perhaps even echo, the anxieties we see in the Moscow characters, like Berlioz's groundless fear?
That's a really perceptive connection. While Berlioz's fear is this inexplicable premonition, Pilate's anguish is more existential, a philosophical torment rooted in his isolation and the burden of absolute power. He's trapped by his role, longing for simple comfort, facing a decision that challenges his very being. And it's into this internal torment that Yeshua HaNozri, the accused, is brought. Yeshua is described as a man of about 27, dressed in an old and torn light blue chiton, bruised, cut, caked with blood. He looks at Pilate with anxious curiosity, a striking contrast to Pilate's own suffering. When questioned about inciting people, Yeshua denies ever wanting to destroy the temple. He speaks in Greek, and his core philosophy emerges, one that is truly revolutionary in Pilate's brutal world. All men are good.
All men are good, even in that context.
Even then. He even extends this radical compassion to the centurion Mark, known as Rat Slayer for his cruelty, describing him as an unhappy man who became cruel only after being disfigured. The core insight here is that Yeshua's radical empathy confronts Pilate's cynical pragmatism, exposing the moral void beneath his power.
This raises a huge question for us. How does such an uncompromising belief in the fundamental goodness of humanity contend with the harsh, brutal realities of Pilate's world, a world of imperial power and constant violence? Yeshua's insights into Pilate's own personal suffering are incredibly profound. They seem to pierce through Pilate's hardened exterior. He tells Pilate directly, "You are too closed off and have definitively lost faith in people. Your life is impoverished, hegemon."
Yes, Yeshua's words clearly strike a nerve. Pilate is visibly intrigued and disturbed by Yeshua, recognizing something utterly unique in him. He genuinely sees no grounds for indictment, finding Yeshua to be mentally ill with merely a mad utopian talk. In fact, Pilate concocts a clear plan to save Yeshua. He decides to remove him from Jerusalem, confine him to Stratonian Caesarea on the Mediterranean, effectively placing him under his own protection.
So he wants to save him.
It reveals a sliver of mercy within the powerful, tormented procurator.
But despite Pilate's desire to save Yeshua, he's still a Roman authority, bound by political necessity. He asks Yeshua a crucial question directly, one that will determine his fate. "Did you ever say anything about the great Caesar?" Answer: "Did you? Yes or no?" What is Pilate trying to achieve with this line of questioning? And what does Yeshua's response, or lack thereof, in this excerpt signify?
Pilate is subtly yet desperately trying to guide Yeshua towards a politically expedient no, an answer that would allow him to grant clemency without undermining Roman authority.
He's feeding him the answer.
Exactly. He draws out the word no to emphasize its importance. Yeshua's answer isn't explicitly given here, but it's clear that his uncompromising honesty, refusing to deny or confirm in the way Pilate wishes, leads directly to his condemnation. The core insight is that Pilate's internal conflict, his nascent wish for mercy battling his overriding political fear, ultimately leads to a moral compromise that will haunt him eternally. He values his position more than the truth Yeshua represents. Hashtag a choice, a betrayal, and a consequence.
Following Yeshua's interrogation, Pilate confirms the death sentences for 3 robbers and Yeshua HaNozri. But there's a flicker of hope, a long-standing custom. One criminal is to be released in honor of the great feast of Passover. How does Pilate attempt to use this custom to save Yeshua?
Pilate seizes upon this opportunity. He attempts to exercise his authority, telling the high priest Caiaphas that Roman authority wants to correct an obvious error. He argues that Bar Rabban, a known murderer and rebel, is incomparably more dangerous than Han-Asri.
Makes sense.
He's laying out a logical, even politically sensible argument to persuade Kaifa to release Yeshua instead of the far more violent Bar Rabban. He sees this as a clear chance to right a perceived wrong and spare an innocent man. The core insight here is that Pilate, despite his position, still seeks to manipulate religious custom for what he perceives as a just outcome.
But Kaifa, proudly and calmly, rejects Pilate's suggestion outright. He throws Pilate's own words back at him. "You threaten me after you yourself have confirmed the sentence passed. Can that be?" He then adamantly insists on Bar Rabban's release. What does Pilate's response tell us about his underlying character? Is it justice or just political expediency? And what are the long-term consequences he predicts?
Pilate's response to Kaifa's defiance is truly chilling. It reveals the depth of his frustration and anger. He bares his teeth in a smile and declares, "Know then that from now on, High Priest, you will have no peace, neither you nor your people."
A curse almost.
Pretty much. And then, with a flourish, he proclaims himself Pontius Pilate, equestrian of the Golden Spear. This moment powerfully sets up the long-term historical consequence of their actions, a curse on Kaifa and his people that will echo through centuries. It's a statement of ultimate authority, not just Roman, but almost cosmic. The core insight is that Pilate, while politically compromised, still understands and pronounces a form of cosmic justice for the moral failings of those who denied mercy. His actions are an act of retribution, even if his earlier actions were born of fear.
And just like that, the fate is sealed. Pilate announces Bar Rabban's release to the numberless crowd, and the agitated city responds with a long rumble as if of surprise or relief. Then dramatically, the sun, clanging, burst over him and flooded his ears with fire. The three condemned men, including Yeshua, are led to Bald Mountain. Matthew Levi, Yeshua's lone companion, follows, sobbing tearlessly and wounding his chest in despair, recognizing his grave error of letting Yeshua go alone. He even prays for God to send Yeshua death, as if death would be a mercy.
It's a moment of profound despair and helplessness. Meanwhile, Pilate, ever the strategist, orchestrates the fate of Judas of Kiriath. Afranius, his secret service chief, is tasked with this mission. Judas is lured by Nisa, a young woman, into a lane in the lower city. He thinks he's meeting her for a romantic rendezvous, completely unaware of the trap.
And what's the outcome of that rendezvous for Judas? And what subtle shifts in responsibility does the narrative introduce?
Judas is murdered in the Gethsemane garden. The 30 pieces of silver he received are symbolically thrown over Caiaphas' palace fence. Later, Afranius reports to Pilate explaining that Judas was lured out not by others, but by his own purpose, specifically to hide his money in a secluded spot.
So it's Judas's fault.
That's the implication. It's a subtle yet crucial point, shifting responsibility away from a direct assassination, framing it as an unfortunate consequence of Judas's own greed. It's a very clever reinterpretation. The core insight is how easily truth can be manipulated, how self-serving motivations can be used to justify seemingly inevitable outcomes, and the contrast after Judas's death is particularly poignant. The garden is described as pealing with the song of nightingales, a starkly beautiful soundscape, a haunting backdrop to the violence and betrayal. It implies nature's indifference, perhaps, or a dark serenity after the act.
Ultimately, the narrative reveals Pilate's ultimate fate, an eternal dream. He walks with his dog, Banga, on a shining road straight towards the moon, and accompanying him is none other than Yeshua. What is the significance of this eternal dream? What does it suggest about the resolution of his internal torment?
Yes, and in this eternal dream, they argue about something very complex and important, neither able to refute the other. It's a never-ending philosophical debate, a continuous pursuit of understanding. The narrative explicitly states, "It went without saying that today's execution proved to be a sheer misunderstanding." Here, this philosopher, who had thought up such an incredibly absurd thing as that all men are good, was walking beside him, therefore he was alive.
So a reconciliation.
This beautiful and powerful image suggests a posthumous peace, a philosophical resolution and companionship that tragically eluded Pilate in his tormented life. The core insight here is that even for those who make grave moral errors, there can be a path to forgiveness and ultimate understanding, often found through reconciliation with the very truth they once denied. It's an act of profound cosmic mercy.
So after that profound shift to ancient Yerushalayim and Pilate's eternal torment, we're thrust back into the chaos of 1930s Moscow. And true to Woland's chilling prophecy, Mikhail Alexandrovich Berlioz meets his gruesome end. He fell backwards, the back of his head lightly striking the cobbles, seeing in his final moments the gold-tinged moon. A woman driver on a tram bears down on him with irresistible force. What grim, precise details confirm Woland's power and the inescapable nature of his prophecies.
The scene of Berlioz's death is described with grim, almost cinematic precision. The tram went over Berlioz, and a round, dark object was thrown up the cobbled slope. Having rolled back down this slope, it went bouncing along the cobblestones of the street, his head.
Oh, God.
This exact visceral detail not only confirms Woland's preternatural power and the inescapable nature of his prophecies, but also serves as a shocking, violent disruption of the mundane Moscow reality. It's a literal shattering of the rationalist's world. The core insight. Woland isn't merely a trickster, he's an agent of inescapable fate, exposing the fragility of human free will when confronted with cosmic forces.
Ivan, witnessing this horrific event, immediately connects the seemingly absurd dots. He realizes Onushka had spilled the oil, and the driver was indeed a woman. The chilling realization dawns on him. Woland is not mad in the least. He understands with a jolt of terror that the mysterious consultant knew the exact picture of Berlioz's death beforehand. He thinks, then didn't he set it all up himself? What happens to Ivan as he tries to pursue Woland and his associates?
Ivan's subsequent pursuit of Woland Koroviev and the mischievous cat Behemoth is nothing short of frantic and surreal. He's utterly amazed by their supernatural speed, finding himself dazzled by the lights of the Arbat Square in what seems like 20 seconds.
Impossible speed.
Totally. Despite his desperate efforts, the trio slips away. He tries to find the professor in his specific apartment, number 47 in house number 13, but of course finds no one. It just deepens his confusion and sense of unreality.
And as you can imagine, Ivan's wild claims about a talking cat, a foreign professor, Pontius Pilate, they lead him straight to Dr. Stravinsky's psychiatric clinic. He's swiftly diagnosed with schizophrenia. But his time in the clinic isn't just about his mental state, is it? What profound realization does Ivan have there that shifts his entire perspective?
Ivan's internal monologue in the clinic is truly fascinating, very insightful. He debates his own frenzied actions, questioning why he got so excited about Berlioz falling under a tram car. The new Ivan reasons that man is mortal and, as has rightly been said, unexpectedly mortal. In a moment of striking lucidity, he realizes it would have been more intelligent to question him politely about what happened further on with Pilate and his prisoner Hun-Nosri.
The story. He wants the rest of the story.
Exactly. His mind becomes utterly consumed with Pilate. He transforms from this furious pursuer of justice into a tormented seeker of knowledge, a shift initiated by the unsettling encounter. The core insight. Ivan's madness is actually a form of awakening, freeing him from the rigid Soviet ideology and allowing him to seek deeper philosophical truths.
Meanwhile, back at the Variety Theater, more bizarre events unfold, starting with its director, Stiopa Likadiev. Stiopa wakes up in apartment No. 50, the very apartment he shared with the late Berlioz, which has this strange reputation for mysterious disappearances. Woland appears, claiming Stiopa signed a contract for 7 black magic performances, including a huge 10,000 ruble advance. Stiopa then mysteriously vanishes, with telegrams unbelievably arriving from Yalta confirming he was there but left for Moscow. How? What happens to Rimsky and Veronuka, the theater's financial director and administrator, when they try to investigate?
Right. Rimsky, the financial director, and Veronuka, the administrator, are tasked with investigating Stiopa's inexplicable disappearance. Veronuka, attempting to deliver telegrams, gets intercepted by the short, fat man Behemoth and the nasal voice of Azazello. He's brutally beaten, the telegram stolen. And then, in one of the novel's most unsettling transformations, he is turned into a vampire by Hela, described as a completely naked girl, red-haired, her eyes burning with a phosphorescent gleam.
Turned into a vampire.
Just like that.
Just like that. And what happens after Veronuka's transformation? What does his terror reveal about the true nature of Woland's gang?
Veronuka later reappears, initially lying that he was found drunk in Pushkino, a convenient, if weak, cover story. But under Rimsky's pressure, he confesses to being terrified of Woland's gang. He begs to be locked in a bulletproof cell to protect himself. Rimsky himself, witnessing Veronuka's true vampiric form, pale, cold, with a spectral chill, barely escapes with his life. His phone lines cut, the bell to his office broken, plunging him into a paroxysm of terror and disbelief. These events aren't random. They are a calculated demonstration of Woland's power, designed to expose the fragility of Moscow's bureaucratic and rationalist world. The core insight is that Woland's gang aren't merely pranksters. They're terrifying agents of chaos who force reality to bend, revealing the deep-seated fears and moral weaknesses of those they target. Tag the mysterious inhabitants of apartment number 50.
The epicenter of this unfolding chaos is undeniably apartment number 50 on Sadovaya Street, where Berlioz and Steopa lived. This building is described as being steeped in strange disappearances and all sorts of legends, creating this atmosphere of deep, almost supernatural unease even before Woland's arrival. What is the significance of this apartment as a focal point for the devil's activities?
It's a building with a history of inexplicable events, a place where reality seems to fray at the edges. It makes it the perfect stage for Woland's supernatural interventions. One of the early victims of Woland's retinue is Nikanor Ivanovich, the chairman of the house management. He enters apartment number 50 and is met by Koroviev, posing as a rather unconvincing interpreter.
And this is where things get hilariously absurd and morally pointed. Koroviev tricks Nikanor into accepting a wad of foreign currency, which remarkably crept into his briefcase by itself.
Okay.
Nikanor, exposed as a chiseler and a crook, is secretly delighted by the prospect of a villa in Nice this money could buy him. But his joy is short-lived, isn't it? What's the outcome?
Precisely. He's later arrested, and in a brilliant stroke of magical realism, the foreign currency he greedily accepted turns into mere paper, specifically foreign currency labels, in the presence of the authorities.
These labels. Worthless.
Totally worthless. He then experiences a terrifying dream in the clinic, witnessing other people confessing to illicit currency dealings, reflecting the widespread corruption of the time. The core insight here is that this incident isn't just about magic, it's a moral judgment. It reveals the inherent avarice and illegality bubbling beneath the surface of Soviet society. The money, a symbol of forbidden capitalist desire, literally turns to dust in his hands, highlighting its illusory value in a system built on fear and scarcity.
Nikanor wasn't the only one caught in Woland's trap. The devil's reach extended even to the illicit currency exchange, where the barman, Andrei Fokic, faced his own bizarre comeuppance. He also encounters Woland, Azazello, and Behemoth, and predictably, his money also turns into wine labels. But it gets even stranger, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Adding to the bizarre, his hat itself undergoes a transformation. It becomes a velvet beret with a disheveled cock's feather, then, even more absurdly, a black kitten that attacks him.
His hat becomes a kitten.
That attacks him. Convinced he's dying due to a prediction, he visits Professor Kuzmin, a psychiatrist. Kuzmin initially diagnoses him with nerves, but later, in a moment of personal horror, finds that his own money has also turned into 3 labels from bottles of Abruzzo wine.
It's contagious.
It seems so. These instances serve as a recurring motif, exposing the deep-seated corruption and the illusory nature of wealth and stability in Moscow. The core insight is that the Devil's Gang doesn't just steal. They expose and humiliate by turning ill-gotten gains into worthless paper, forcing a confrontation with moral bankruptcy and the absurdity of valuing fleeting illicit wealth.
The ultimate public spectacle of Woland's brand of chaos unfolds at the Variety Theater. Georges Bengalski, the master of ceremonies, introduces Woland's black magic show. With his seemingly harmless assistants, Faggot, who is Koroviev, and the cat, Behemoth, on stage, what deeper satirical purpose does this black magic show serve beyond mere entertainment?
This show is far from mere entertainment. It becomes a powerful, brutal, satirical exposé of Moscow society. Money literally rains down from the ceiling, exciting the audience into this greedy frenzy, only to instantly turn into ordinary paper once they grab it. Then, in an unforgettable moment of grotesque humor, Bengalski's head is torn off by Faggot.
Torn off.
Only to be reattached. But the psychological damage is permanent. He's left deeply traumatized, constantly clutching his neck.
And then comes the infamous Lady Shop segment. A magical shop appears on stage, offering dazzling Parisian dresses and accessories. Women eagerly take them, rushing to put them on. But what happens after the show? We hear that when the seance ended, the audience came outside and bang, everybody turned out to be naked. The new clothes vanish, leaving the women exposed and humiliated. What is the core truth Bulgakov is laying bare with this spectacle?
It's a stark and utterly unforgettable critique of superficial desires and the emptiness of material possessions. It highlights the fleeting nature of vanity in the face of true reality. Further demonstrating the show's moral judgments, the liar Dunchal, a currency hoarder, is exposed by Woland, and his hidden currency, too, turns to paper, leading to an enraged audience member attacking him. The core insight, the devil's magic, acts as a merciless mirror, reflecting the existing flaws of Moscow society, its greed, materialism, hypocrisy, and forcing this humiliating public reckoning. Bulgakov's satire doesn't just entertain, it interrogates and condemns.
The chaos culminates in a literal blaze. Behemoth, in a truly bizarre act, drinks benzene, and then sets apartment now 50 ablaze, completely engulfing it in flames. What is the significance of this final destructive act, and who else is caught in its fiery aftermath?
And in the midst of those flames, the corpse of Baron Michael, an employee of the Spectacles Commission, mysteriously appears with upthrust chin and glassy eyes. He was visiting apartment number 50 as a guest just before the fire, suggesting he too was caught in the devil's judgment. As the fire rages and bells clang across Sadovaya demanding fire engines, silhouettes 3 male and 1 naked female fly out of the 5th-story window,
Woland's crew escaping,
marking Woland's retinue, making their spectacular and defiant escape. The core insight here is that the fire consumes the very place of deceit and corruption, serving as a cleansing judgment. Woland's chaos, paradoxically, brings a strange form of justice, exposing how easily a society can succumb to deceit and how readily its citizens will trade their integrity for fleeting gains. #, Margarita's despair and transformation.
We now turn to the novel's true heroine, Margarita Nikolaevna, whose story adds such profound emotional depth to the narrative. She's childless, 30-year-old, and the wife of a very prominent specialist who adored her. They lived in seemingly idyllic circumstances, occupying the entire top floor of a magnificent house in a garden near the Arbat. What emptiness does Margarita feel despite this seemingly perfect life?
Yes, on the surface, everything one could desire. Yet, despite the seemingly perfect life, Margarita feels a profound emptiness, a deep, unfulfilled longing, a sense of being trapped in a golden cage. She's described as having an extraordinary loneliness in her eyes. Her profound connection to the unnamed writer, the Master, is revealed in her unwavering belief that her life was in this novel he was writing.
The novel's about Pilate.
Exactly. This novel was not just a piece of art. It was the very essence of their shared existence and the source of her spiritual nourishment. The core insight, true fulfillment, isn't found in material comfort or societal approval, but in deep personal connection and shared creative purpose.
But then tragedy strikes. The Master's novel about Pilate is rejected by the literary establishment, leading to his mental breakdown and, in a moment of despair, the burning of his manuscript. He's then confined to a psychiatric hospital, completely unknown to Margarita. What is the emotional impact of the Master's disappearance on Margarita? What does her desperate plea reveal?
Margarita, consumed by grief and desperation, does everything in her power to find him, but finds nothing. She returns to her grand house, but her spirit is utterly broken. The profound loneliness she felt before now intensifies to an unbearable degree. Her heartfelt confession reveals the depth of her suffering. "If you've been exiled, why don't you send me word? People do send word. Have you stopped loving me? No, for some reason I don't believe that. It means you were exiled and died. Release me then, I beg you. Give me freedom to live, finally, to breathe the air."
Just heartbreaking.
It's a cry of pure anguish, a longing for an end to her tormented existence. The core insight here is that Margarita's suffering is a direct consequence of the regime's suppression of art and freedom, mirroring Bulgakov's own despair.
It's at this moment of utter despair, while sitting by the Kremlin wall, that Margarita is approached by Azazello, described as the fiery redhead with a fang. He immediately cuts to the unsettling chase, informing her that Berlioz's head was filched from the coffin that very morning. He clearly knows more than he should. What is Azazello's offer, and what does her astute deduction about its cost reveal?
Azazello then extends an invitation to her to meet a foreigner, Woland, assuring her he's not dangerous at all. Margarita, with surprising astuteness despite her despair, immediately deduces, "I must give myself to him."
She knows there's a price.
Azazello's haughty, almost dismissive reply is telling. Any woman in the world, I can assure you, would dream of just that. This implies the offer is of immense power and transformation, far beyond conventional desires, and that Margarita is uniquely suited for it. The core insight. Margarita's despair has forged this sharp intuition. It allows her to recognize the Faustian bargain offered and willingly embrace it for the chance to find her master. She understands the cost, but at this point, she has nothing left to lose.
And then, the literal transformation. Azazello gives Margarita a small box of Azazello's cream. Upon applying it, her body undergoes this magical immediate metamorphosis. Her hair thick and curly, her body took on a smooth, rosy, and youthful glow. Even more astonishingly, she becomes completely invisible. What does this transformation symbolize for Margarita, and what happens to others who use the cream?
This transformation is depicted as incredibly liberating for Margarita. She sheds her former self, her earthly burdens. Emboldened by her new state, she leaves this poignant, defiant note for her husband. I have become a witch from the grief and calamities that have struck me.
A declaration.
Exactly. Not a lament, but a declaration of newfound agency. Her housemaid, Natasha, also uses the cream and undergoes a transformation, and even more comically, turns their neighbor, Nikolai Ivanovich, into a hog who becomes her rather undignified mount.
Turns him into a hog.
Yeah, the core insight. This magical cream serves as a literal vehicle for escaping the confines of mundane, oppressive reality. It enables Margarita to embrace her true, wild potential and symbolically break free from the constraints of her former life.
Invisible and free, Margarita takes to the skies on a broomstick, embracing her new identity. Her first target for revenge in a moment of righteous fury is Litunsky, the critic who so viciously destroyed the Master's novel. She utterly demolishes his apartment, smashing windows, causing absolute chaos and terror. But amidst her destructive rage, Margarita has this truly poignant moment of unexpected mercy and compassion. What happens? What does it reveal?
Amidst her destructive rage, Margarita encounters a frightened boy in a damaged apartment, crying out for his mother. Margarita, despite her transformation into a vengeful witch, cannot ignore his distress. She reassures him that it's just some boys breaking windows with a slingshot. She tells him tenderly, "I'm nowhere, I'm your dream," and even tells him a story until he falls asleep.
Wow, even then.
This brief act of compassion in the midst of chaos is deeply significant. It demonstrates that even when embracing the dark, Margarita retains her humanity and capacity for empathy, the core insight. Bulgakov suggests that true mercy and compassion are inherent human qualities that can persist even in the most transformed and vengeful states, offering a profound counterpoint to the novel's dark satire.
And she absolutely revels in her flight, feeling completely free, soaring over Moscow. She's soon joined by Natasha and, comically, Nikolai Ivanovich, still very much a hog. They fly over the city, eventually landing for a refreshing swim in a river, where they encounter fat-faced frogs playing music on wooden pipes. A beautifully surreal and whimsical detail that perfectly caps off her liberation. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated freedom. Hashtag the grand ball at Satan's. Margarita's magical flight culminates with her arrival at Woland's apartment, which, in another astonishing transformation, is no longer a mere flat, but a vast columned ballroom sprawling into endlessness. She's chosen as the hostess, and Kurofiev explains why. She's a native of the place, and crucially, they searched all of Moscow for margaritas, found 121 margaritas, not one of them was suitable. What makes this Margarita uniquely suitable for this terrifying role as hostess of the Devil's Ball?
This great ball of the full moon is an elaborate, horrifying spectacle, serving as this darkly glamorous parade of human sin. Guests stream from the fireplace, forming a river of historical figures from hell. Murderers, poisoners, torturers, provocateurs, prostitutes, forgers, traitors, and maniacs. Her unique suitability stems from her unwavering loyalty and profound, unconditional love for the Master, combined with her capacity for deep suffering and, paradoxically, mercy. She is pure-hearted despite her rage. Specific, chilling examples of the guests include infamous figures like Madame Tefana, responsible for a staggering 600 poisonings, along with various torturers and traitors from history.
A real rogues gallery.
It's a nightmarish who's who at the band, forcing Margarita to literally embrace the darkest aspects of humanity, the core insight. The ball is a test of Margarita's moral fortitude, revealing that true virtue can endure even amidst the most profound depravity.
And Margarita, the chosen hostess, endures this terrifying, exhausting parade. She's forced to kiss the hands of countless monstrous figures, feeling her chain had become heavier, and a sharp pain in her arm. It's a physical manifestation of the immense burden she's carrying, the weight of being queen of such a horrific assembly. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos, Woland is almost casually playing chess with Behemoth,
Who, in a wonderfully impudent detail, shamelessly cheats. Yes, the ball is a test of Margarita's endurance and spirit, designed to push her to her limits. And in a pivotal moment, Woland shows Margarita his special globe. He invites her to look closely. For instance, do you see this chunk of land washed on one side by the ocean? Look, it's filling with fire. A war has started there.
and the detail she sees is absolutely gut-wrenching. Margarita leans towards the globe and sees a small house blow up, revealing a small female figure lying on the ground, and next to her, in a pool of blood, a little child with outstretched arms. It's a chillingly specific vision of human suffering. Woland then notes with terrifying detachment that this happens every evening, every day, and not only on one globe, but on all the globes. What universal truth is Bulgakov revealing about human suffering and evil, even amidst all this fantastical chaos?
It's a stark reminder that the devil's grand spectacle isn't just mischief, it's a mirror. The globe vision is Bulgakov's stark truth. The devil's grand spectacle is merely a magnified reflection of humanity's inherent capacity for global violence and innocent suffering. Evil isn't just supernatural, it's a constant, tangible force in our human world that plays out every day, everywhere. It grounds the fantastical firmly in our own brutal reality, the core insight. True horror often resides not in the supernatural, but in humanity's own cruelty and indifference.
After enduring the horrifying spectacle of the ball, Woland finally offers Margarita a wish, a reward for being his hostess. Koroviev, ever the cynical advisor, subtly counsels her to be more reasonable and ask for something for herself, implying personal gain. But Margarita, with an act of profound selflessness that truly defines her character, asks for Frida, a tormented guest, to be released from her suffering. What makes this act of mercy so powerful and significant within the novel's themes?
Margarita's selfless act for Frida is perhaps the novel's most powerful insight. True freedom and compassion emerge when we choose to alleviate the suffering of others, even when offered personal gain. Instead of asking for the master or wealth or any personal comfort, Margarita cries out, asking for Frida to be released from her eternal torment for smothering her baby with a handkerchief.
Oh, wow.
This radical mercy, even from the devil, is the ultimate defiance of despair. It demonstrates Margarita's profound understanding of what it means to truly be free, to alleviate suffering that transcends her own immediate desires, moving beyond personal gain to universal empathy. It's a beautiful moment of grace.
And then, after Margarita's selfless act, Woland makes his famous, almost paradoxical declaration. Never ask for anything, never for anything, and especially from those who are stronger than you. They'll make the offer themselves and give everything themselves. What is the profound philosophical nugget embedded within the devil's own words here?
This is a core teaching, a profound philosophical nugget embedded within the devil's own words. It reveals the paradox of true power and generosity, that genuine acts of grace come unbidden, not coerced. It also implies that true desires, once deeply felt and proven through selfless action, will be met by those who hold ultimate power, the core insight. True desire, demonstrated through selfless action, is its own reward, and those who possess ultimate power will recognize and fulfill it without being asked. It's a moment of surprising grace from the forces of chaos, and it sets the stage for Margarita's true, unspoken wish to finally be granted. #tag the master's fate in the novel's resurrection.
After her selfless plea for Frida's freedom, Margarita then articulates her second and true wish. I want my beloved master to be returned to me right now, this second.
Yeah.
What does the master state when he reappears, and how does Margarita's reaction highlight her unwavering love and belief in him?
And instantly, as if in response to her profound desire, a wind bursts into the room, flattening the candle flames, revealing a full midnight moon. In this ethereal light, the master appears, in his hospital clothes robe, slippers, and the black cap with which he never parted. His unshaven face twitches in a grimace, and he has a crazy timorousness. He is a man broken by his ordeal, physically present but mentally fragile.
Just broken.
Margarita, overwhelmed with emotion, runs to him, kissing him, repeating, "You, you, you." But the master, still deeply traumatized, pushes her away gently, saying, "Don't weep, Margot, don't torment me, I'm gravely ill." He's convinced of his brokenness, stating, "I'm nobody now. From the house of sorrows, I am mentally ill."
Margarita's response, however, is fierce and protective, a powerful declaration of his worth to the very devil himself. He's a master, monsieur, I'm letting you know that. Cure him, he's worth it. Woland then, somewhat mockingly, asks about the master's novel. When the master replies, it is a novel about Pontius Pilate. Woland bursts into thunderous laughter, exclaiming, "Stupendous! Couldn't you have found some other subject?" What happens next? And what is the profound significance of Woland's iconic declaration about the master's burned manuscript?
And then comes one of the most iconic lines in all of literature, a line that resonated so deeply with readers in a time of intense censorship and destruction of art. Woland, with a flourish, produces the master's manuscript, which had been burned. His legendary line, "Manuscripts don't burn."
Manuscripts don't burn, just chills.
This phrase became proverbial among Russian intellectuals after the novel's publication, truly bearing out the truth of Woland's words. It speaks to the enduring, indestructible power of art and truth, even against the most brutal attempts at destruction and censorship. The core insight here is a defiant statement of artistic immortality. Genuine art, unlike physical copies, possesses an inherent resilience that cannot be extinguished by suppression or even fire. The master then recounts his catastrophe, how his novel was relentlessly rejected and ridiculed by critics like Liptinsky, Ehrman, and Lavrovich, leading to his mental breakdown and the desperate act of burning his work. The resurrection of the manuscript isn't just a magical trick, it is a profound testament to the novel's central theme of the unassailable nature of creative expression.
Margarita then expresses her wish to be returned to their beloved basement refuge, the place where they had found so much happiness before the Master's breakdown. And, in a final act of chaotic justice, Woland's retinue also deals with Elizzy Muggeridge, the snitch who had falsely denounced the Master to take over his apartment. How does Woland's gang exact justice for the Master's betrayal, and what does it satirize about the Soviet system? Korolev, with a wave of his hand, magically removes Muggeridge from all official records and even from the landlord's memory. He states, "If there are no papers, there's no person. I have no papers, so there's precisely no me."
No papers, no person. Brutal.
It's a sharp satirical jab at the Soviet bureaucracy, implying that without official documentation, one ceases to exist in the eyes of the state. The core insight. Woland's whimsical yet chilling demonstration of power exposes the absurd reliance on official records in a totalitarian state, where identity and existence itself are tied to paper, allowing for easy manipulation and erasure. It's poetic justice for the snitch, erased as he had tried to erase the Master. After all this, Woland gives Margarita a little horseshoe as a memento, which is comically found and returned by Anushka, the woman from the earlier prophecy who spilled the oil, unknowingly fulfilling another small detail of Woland's grand design. Woland's retinue and the Master and Margarita then depart in a black car with a silent rook, a figure resembling a chess piece, as the driver, leaving Anushka to gossip about the nice little apartment.
An hour later, Margarita and the Master are back in their basement of the small house in the lane off the Arbat, with everything as it had been before that terrible autumn night last year. The notebook disfigured by fire lay before her, and next to it rose a pile of intact notebooks. Margarita weeps quietly from the shock she had experienced and from happiness, truly understanding that nothing disappeared. The all-powerful Woland really was all-powerful. She tenderly caresses the manuscript, as one caresses a favorite cat, a beautiful image of comfort and renewed hope. The core insight, this return to their humble sanctuary with the resurrected novel, signifies not just a restoration of their lives, but a profound triumph of art, love, and truth over the destructive forces of the world. Hashtag the end of the Moscow mystery.
So, with Woland and his retinue gone, the Moscow authorities launch an unrelenting investigation, desperately trying to explain the extraordinary case as devilry, with an admixture of some hypnotic tricks and distinct criminality. They are completely baffled. Why are the authorities utterly baffled by Woland's visit? What does their futile investigation ultimately reveal about Soviet rationalism?
They are utterly baffled because nothing fits into their rational, materialist worldview. Witnesses are confused, evidence vanishes, no posters, no contracts for Woland's show can be found. The entire top administration of the Variety Theater inexplicably vanished. Apartment number 50, despite being under constant surveillance, remained utterly inaccessible, frustrating all attempts to enter it.
They just can't get in.
Nope. Woland and his company simply disappear without a trace, baffling investigators who can only conclude in their attempts to rationalize the impossible that the hypnotizing gang was able to hypnotize at an enormous distance, not only individual persons, but even whole groups of them.
Mass hypnosis, that's their explanation.
That's the best they can come up with. The core insight. This official explanation itself highlights the absurdity of trying to apply rigid Soviet-era logic to supernatural events. It demonstrates the complete failure of rationalism to comprehend the profound, inexplicable forces that truly shape reality.
And the effects of Woland's visit leave lasting psychological scars on Moscow's citizens, far beyond the immediate chaos. Take Georges Bengalsky, the master of ceremonies whose head was torn off. After 3 months in the clinic, he recovers physically, but completely loses his gaiety, essential for his profession. He's tormented by the public asking how he liked it better, with or without his head. Okay. Every spring, during the full moon, he falls into anxiety, clutches his neck, weeps. He's forced to retire. What does Bengalsky's fate tell us about the lasting impact of confronting the absurd?
Bengalsky's fate, for me, is a poignant example of how a direct confrontation with the supernatural can shatter one's core identity. His physical healing doesn't restore his spirit. He loses insight. Those who superficially engage with the absurd are left with a permanent, crippling trauma, symbolizing the fragility of outward composure when faced with deep, inexplicable truths.
Then there's Nikanor Ivanovich, the house management chairman, who is tricked into taking the foreign currency. He not only avoids all theaters, but changes countenance at any theatrical conversation. His nightmares continue, leading him to hate the poet Pushkin and an actor who only existed in his dreams. On full moons, he gets terribly drunk, haunted by the cursed line of hateful figures from his dream, the profiteers exposed by Woland's magic.
Nikanor Ivanovich's continued torment illustrates the pervasive paranoia and guilt of a corrupt society. His irrational hatred for Pushkin, who had no involvement, highlights the way trauma can distort reality. The core insight. Woland's intervention doesn't just punish, it unmasks inner corruption, leaving individuals perpetually haunted by their own moral failings, even when the external threat is gone.
And the neighbor, Nikolai Ivanovich, who was turned into a hog and flown around by Natasha.
He comically admits to the investigators, obedient to constraint, I was compelled to submit to flying Natasha, and begs that his wife not be told.
Please don't tell my wife I was a flying pig.
Pretty much. The core insight here is that while some are deeply traumatized, others are simply left with bizarre, humiliating secrets. It reflects the pervasive fear of public shame and the absurdity of private life under a totalitarian regime.
And finally, Ivan Nikolaevich, the poet who started this whole journey at Patriarch's Pawns, what becomes of him? And what is the profound nature of his recurring experience with the full moon?
Ivan Nikolaevich, once the frantic poet homeless, becomes a professor. He wakes up silent but perfectly calm and well the morning after the devil's departure. His needled memory grows quiet, and until the next full moon, no one will trouble the professor, neither the noseless killer of Gestas nor the cruel fifth procurator of Judea, the equestrian Pontius Pilate.
So he finds some peace.
Temporary peace. On the full moon, he is compelled to go to the Patriarch's Pawns. He talks to himself, never taking his kindling eyes off the mysterious stranger, the moon. He sees himself as one more of the moon's victims, like me. His tormentor Pilate comes to him with the full moon.
Still haunted.
It confirms that the encounter with the supernatural has left an indelible, recurring mark on his psyche, a monthly reliving of the profound truths revealed to him, the core insight. Ivan's recurring torment is a form of spiritual burden, a constant reminder of the profound, unanswerable questions of existence and justice that he now carries, far beyond the narrow scope of Soviet ideology. #Doge, the journey to eternal refuge.
Our story, and this deep dive, culminates with Woland, Koroviev, and Behemoth on black horses, and Azazello carrying the Master and Margarita flying in the black tail of his cloak. They bid a final, definitive farewell to Moscow, which quite literally vanishes behind them, as if it had fallen through the earth. This departure is more than just a magical escape, isn't it? What profound symbolic transition occurs as they journey into this ethereal space? How do Woland's retinue transform?
This departure is indeed a profound symbolic transition, a shedding of earthly masks. As they fly, their deceptions and magic garments fall away, revealing their true cosmic forms. Koroviev Faggot, the ragged circus costume and self-appointed interpreter, is revealed as a dark violet knight with the most gloomy and never-smiling face, softly clinking golden chains. Behemoth, the gluttonous cheating cat, transforms into a youth demon, the page boy, the best jester the world has ever seen.
The cat becomes a jester.
The best jester. Azazello, the fiery redhead with a fang, becomes the demon of the waterless desert, the killer Tyrann. And Woland himself appears in his true image, his horse a mass of darkness, its mane a storm cloud, his spurs the white flecks of stars. The core insight here is that their grotesque earthly forms were mere disguises. In their true cosmic identities, they embody powerful, timeless archetypes beyond human understanding and judgment.
As they journey further into this ethereal space, they see Pontius Pilate, still eternally tormented, sitting on a moonlit path. He says that even the moon gives him no peace, and that his is a bad job. He dreams of walking with Yeshua, but alas, for some reason he never manages to get onto this path, forever trapped in this unfulfilled conversation. What is the meaning of Pilate's ongoing suffering, and how is it ultimately resolved?
This eternal torment is a direct consequence of his inability to fully commit to mercy during his lifetime. He's forever chasing the truth he almost embraced. But in a truly monumental and beautiful moment, Woland addresses the master. He, whom the hero you invented and have just set free so yearns to see, has read your novel.
Pilate read the master's novel.
Yes. This is a profound revelation, a cosmic validation. The master's novel, the very work he burned and believed destroyed, now becomes the key to Pilate's salvation, his path to finding peace.
Yeah.
The core insight, the redemptive power of art. The master's creative truth, once suppressed, ultimately transcends time and even death to bring peace to one who denied it.
And as a final act of grace, Woland offers the Master and Margarita eternal refuge. He tells the master, Leave them to each other. Let's not interfere with them. And maybe they'll still arrive at something. He waves his arm, and Yerushalayim itself went out, its torment extinguished. The master can finally sleep, finding peace in his new refuge, with Margarita watching over him and his resurrected novel forever by his side. It's a beautiful, bittersweet ending that emphasizes peace, love, and the enduring power of creation. #outro. This deep dive into the Master and Margarita truly reveals a world where reality is fluid, where truth is often found in the most unexpected places, even from the devil himself, and where satire, fantasy, and ancient history intertwine to critique human failings and celebrate enduring human values. From Bulgakov's own defiant act of writing this novel under a repressive regime, to Margarita's unwavering love and the master's miraculously resurrected manuscript, we've seen how art, love, and the pursuit of truth can transcend even the greatest obstacles and the most brutal attempts at suppression.
It truly does. The novel constantly pushes us to reconsider what is real, what is good, and what is truly powerful. It reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, and that sometimes the most profound truths are revealed through the most absurd and chaotic means.
So what does this extraordinary journey into Bulgakov's world mean for you, the learner? Perhaps it challenges us to consider, what kind of eternal refuge would you seek? Not from the devil, perhaps, but from the everyday trials and overwhelming information overload of your own reality. And what story, one seemingly lost or forgotten, would you wish to resurrect and allow to finally find its peace in your own life?
Indeed. It's a reminder that courage in the face of adversity and the pursuit of truth and beauty can carve out a lasting legacy even when all seems lost.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an eye out for those moments when reality twists just enough to reveal a deeper, perhaps more magical truth.